Hi, I'm Oren. I survived a car crash that almost killed me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was waking up alone, realizing my family had boarded a plane to New Zealand. Without me. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a text. Don't call us while we're happy. And then came the lies. They told everyone I needed space, that I'd gone off to heal. But really, they erased me. From photos, from the will, from every conversation. What kind of family sends you soup you're allergic to, and changes your medical records to make it look like you walked away? Would you want to know how far your own blood would go to pretend you never existed? The rain hadn't stopped since noon. Portland in late autumn was predictable like that. Gray, cold, damp enough to chill you straight through, especially when the wind hit just right. I remember thinking, as I drove back from dinner, that I should have brought a thicker jacket. Not that it mattered now. Dinner had been quiet. Too quiet. Supposedly a celebration for the freelance contract I'd just landed. Nothing massive, but it meant consistent income and breathing room. My parents picked the restaurant, a mid-range Italian place where the lighting made everyone look vaguely exhausted. My brother Sebastian showed up late and spent most of the evening tapping through his phone, nodding without listening. Mom ordered wine without asking what I wanted. Dad made a toast, but it was mostly about Sebastian's upcoming trip to New Zealand. "I'll be off the grid," Sebastian had grinned. "Spiritual reset. Just the three of us. Finally." Just the three of them. I tried not to let it show. Tried to act like I didn't notice the way the conversation veered every time I spoke, like I was the commercial break in their family sitcom. I paid the bill out of habit. No one objected. No one even said thank you. By the time I got in my car, it was pushing 5:30 p.m. The sun had long disappeared behind the curtain of clouds. The rain thickened, making the streets glossy and unpredictable. I turned on the wipers, adjusted the defroster, and merged onto I-5 with that dull ache in my chest that I'd gotten used to, a mix of disappointment and resignation that never seemed to let up. About 10 minutes into the drive, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced. A group message, "Safe flight," from Mom. I didn't bother opening it. I kept my hands at 10 and 2, trying not to speed despite the growing pull in my gut. They were already gone. The deer came out of nowhere. One blink I was watching the windshield blur. The next I saw brown, wet fur and the flash of wide, panicked eyes. I swerved. Too fast, too hard. The tires screamed against the pavement. Then the car tilted, spun, slammed into the guardrail. A cracking sound exploded next to me. Glass? Bone? My head jerked forward, everything spun. The airbag punched me in the chest like a boxer with a grudge. Then, nothing. Just noise fading. Just black. When I opened my eyes again, fluorescent lights pierced through the haze, a ceiling. Monitors beeped, something cold pressed against my arm. Then a voice, firm but kind. "Stay with me, sir. You're in the hospital. You were in an accident. You're safe." Safe? I couldn't feel my legs. The nurse, short brown hair, freckles, too tired for her age, held a clipboard. She didn't smile. "You've been out for a while. We contacted your emergency contacts. No one's here yet, but that's not unusual right away. Sometimes flights, work." She trailed off, trying not to say what she was thinking. I stared at the clock on the wall. It was nearly midnight. The accident must have happened hours ago. They had time. I drifted in and out. Nurses came and went. IV bags were changed, vitals were taken. At one point, a surgeon came by to explain the fractures. Multiple breaks in both legs, some internal bleeding, a concussion. "You'll be off your feet for a while," he said, like he was talking about the weather. Still, no one showed. It was the middle of the next day when my phone, retrieved and left beside my bed, buzzed. A message from Mom. "We just landed in Auckland. Don't call us while we're happy here." I read it twice, then again. No typos, no joke, not even a "hope you're okay." My hand went slack. The phone dropped to the sheets. I didn't reach for it. I didn't curse. I didn't cry. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the distance stretch, not just across continents, but across years, across every holiday skipped, every text ignored, every moment I thought was just them being busy. Sebastian had said it at dinner. "Don't ruin Mom's trip with your crisis, man." They were already gone before the flight ever took off. I hadn't even realized I'd been erased until they said it out loud. When someone disappears long enough, you start inventing reasons so it won't hurt as much. That's what I told myself as the medical van pulled away, leaving me at the base of my apartment building. Getting inside was a project. The driver helped me to the door, but the key, taped to the inside of my wallet, was barely reachable from my seated position. I fumbled for minutes. The door groaned open like it hadn't been touched in months. The scent of must and disuse greeted me like an old, uninterested friend. Inside, the apartment was dim. I'd left the curtains drawn before the accident, and the light bulb in the hallway flickered like it had been waiting for the right time to die. I pushed myself forward with the crutches they'd given me, metal scraping against tile. Each step sent shockwaves through my thighs and hips, dull but insistent. The place looked smaller than I remembered. Every corner held some memory, now blurred by painkillers and sleeplessness. And then I saw it. On the kitchen table, a small envelope, plain white, with my name written in Celia's cursive. The handwriting looked too perfect for the chaos I felt inside. I opened it with fingers that trembled from fatigue rather than emotion. The note was short. "We know you're strong. This will help a little. There's soup in the fridge and a lasagna in the freezer. Take care of yourself. Love, Mom." Taped inside were 4 crisp $100 bills and a grocery store receipt. I stood there, envelope in hand, wondering if this was what support looked like now. A transaction, sealed in sentiment. I hobbled over to the fridge. It hummed louder than I remembered, like it was the only thing still working in my life. The soup sat right on the front shelf. "Tomato basil. I'm allergic to tomatoes." I stared at it until the chill seeped into my skin. No key to unlock the cabinet where my crutches' grips were stored. No list of medications. No emergency contact written down. Just soup I couldn't eat, and money that felt more like hush money than help. As night settled in, so did the weight of independence. It had always been my badge of honor, until now, when it felt like a sentence. I tried to reach the bottled water on the top shelf. My body tilted too far, and I crashed to the floor. The bruises from the crash screamed as I hit the tile. I didn't shout. No one would hear me anyway. It took me 15 minutes to crawl to the microwave. My dinner was 2 slices of cold toast from the freezer and a limp banana that had turned brown in my absence. The bathroom was another story. I made it there in what felt like hours, muscles shaking, sweat pooling under my arms. The toilet felt a mile away. I nearly fell twice trying to reach the handle. Once done, I couldn't bring myself to try washing up. My arms were too weak to support the weight of humiliation. Back in the living room, I heard my phone ring. One time. It stopped before I could grab it. I dialed back. The screen blinked, then a message. "This number has blocked you." I stared at the words like they were written in a foreign language. I called again. Same result. Again, nothing. I checked the thread. Celia's name was still saved under Mom. I didn't change it. I just put the phone down. I remembered the nurse from the hospital, the one who'd handed me the discharge papers. She said, "Make sure you're not alone the first week. You'll need help with stairs, hygiene, medicine. Even sitting up can be a fall risk. She meant well. She didn't know that being alone wasn't new for me. It was just finally visible. I grabbed a ruler from the drawer and used it to retrieve a pill I dropped earlier. I noted the time, took a photo of the pill bottle on the floor, then another of the bruise starting to form on my arm. Documentation had become a reflex, not for legal reasons, at least not yet. It was more like proof that I existed, that I was still here. I sat on the couch, looked at the untouched soup again, and whispered to the room, "You don't even know me." By the time midnight rolled in, my phone was at 2%. The charger sat on the counter, too far for me to reach without risking another fall. I leaned back against the wall, eyes open, mind empty. No tears, no yelling, just space. And a silence so thick, it almost had texture. I wasn't going to wait for anyone to give me a voice. I was going to build my own record. The apartment was quieter now, but not because it was peaceful. The quiet had become its own presence, thick and settled in the air like dust in a room that hadn't been opened in years. I sat in my chair by the window, legs still stiff, crutches leaning against the wall beside me. I tried to make a grocery list earlier, something that might resemble control. Eggs, milk, chicken broth. But I stopped halfway down the page. What was the point of writing down things I couldn't reach or cook? Instead, I scrolled, avoided texts, not that there were many, avoided email. Most of my recent interactions were from hospitals, insurance notices, or automated messages. And then it happened. An image flashed up in a suggested post. I recognized the faces instantly. Sebastian, my mother Celia, and my father Harlan, standing under a wooden arch at a vineyard somewhere in the South Island. They were all holding glasses of red, grinning in that well-practiced family photo kind of way. The caption said, "Best family vacation ever. Just the three of us." 3. I tapped the photo, zoomed in. In the corner of the background, there was a wall. On it, faintly visible, was a picture frame. I recognized it. It had once held a photo of all 4 of us. I'd taken it down from my old room when I left for college. That sliver of frame. It felt like a ghost limb. A remnant of a version of us that no longer existed. It wasn't an oversight. It was a statement. A message meant to be read without being said. Later that evening, Sebastian's voice echoed through my phone speakers as I played his latest podcast episode. He called it Setting Boundaries with Toxic People. His voice had that calm, overly enunciated cadence he used when he was posturing for attention. "Sometimes," he said, "the people who drain you the most are the ones who say they love you the loudest. And sometimes, guilt is just their way of holding you hostage." He didn't use my name. He didn't need to. I remembered the last family dinner, before the crash. Him leaning back in his chair, smirking as I tried to explain the new project I was pitching. "Don't let Oren kill the vibe, Mom," he'd laughed. "It's his thing." The podcast was just an extension of the same performance, except now it had a larger audience, a platform to rewrite the story. This wasn't just neglect. It was a campaign. I powered off the podcast and turned to my laptop, pulled up my old Google Drive. I hadn't touched it in months, but I remembered exactly where to find it. Family Reunion 2017. There were photos, group shots, smiling faces, laughter frozen in pixels. One in particular stuck out. We were at a lake. Celia, Sebastian, and Dad were tagged. I was in the shot, standing at the edge, half turned away. But my name wasn't there. The tags skipped over me. That wasn't the first time. As I scrolled, a pattern emerged. Photos where I was present but unacknowledged. Captions that listed 3 names, never 4. Posts where I was cropped out, either by frame or by intention. So I started a new document. Titled it, Timeline of Vanishing. It wasn't angry, just factual. Screenshot after screenshot. Email threads. Photo captions. Medical bills I'd paid for Dad's medication. Messages I'd sent that went unanswered. Birthday cards I'd written. The times I offered help. The times I wasn't invited. And as I cataloged it all, not for revenge, but for clarity, I realized something important. They hadn't just ignored me, they'd erased me, on purpose, cleanly, quietly. My final task for the night was uploading the document to a private cloud folder. At first I named it For Me Only, but as my hand hovered over the keyboard, I thought better of it. I changed the name. Evidence, in case they deny it again. I wasn't just left behind. I was being written out in real time. It was a little after 3 in the afternoon, and the apartment had taken on that hollow hush that comes when even the refrigerator gives up making noise. I sat with my laptop balanced across my knees, attempting to finish an overdue client budget review. The numbers blurred together, no matter how hard I squinted. A small pop-up appeared on the lower corner of my screen. Celia had gone live. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. The video lit up with shaky footage of rolling hills and sunlit vineyards. Then came her voice, chirpy and far too loud. "Isn't this view just heaven? Peaceful, no drama, no negativity, just the 3 of us." The camera tilted to reveal Sebastian clinking glasses with Harlan, all 3 of them glowing from the soft Queenstown sun. A comment appeared beneath the feed. "Wish your whole family could have joined," Celia replied. "The ones who needed to be here are." I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I just hit save video, minimized the window, and sat there in the silence. An hour passed before I heard the knock. 3 short taps. It was Mrs. Geller, the neighbor from 4B, an older woman who never said much beyond greetings and occasional weather complaints. She held out a casserole dish with trembling hands. "I heard you were back from the hospital," she said gently. "Figured you wouldn't be up for cooking." I thanked her, tried not to wince as I took the dish with one hand and steadied myself with the other on the counter. As she turned to leave, she paused. "Your mom stopped by before they left, said you'd asked for some space, that you needed time alone to sort things out." I said nothing. She smiled, oblivious. "Must be hard, though. Not everyone's cut out for being by themselves." I closed the door behind her and locked it, resting my forehead against the cool wood. They're not just gone. They made me the reason why. That thought stuck like splinters under my skin. I carried the casserole back to the counter, untouched. I wasn't sure I could stomach anything right then. Back at my desk, I opened my cloud storage and created a new folder. Public Proof. Inside, I dropped the saved video, screenshots of the comments, Mrs. Geller's quote scribbled down word for word. No embellishment, just what was said. I leaned back in the chair, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I didn't ask to be erased," I muttered, "and now they're using my silence as permission." It didn't feel like rage. It felt like clarity. I opened the camera on my laptop and pressed record. "My name is Orrin Maddox," I began. "If anything happens to me, if I disappear, if I stop responding, it wasn't because I chose to." My voice was low, steady. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I stared straight into the lens. "This is what they said. This is what they did. They left while I was in a hospital bed. They blocked my number. They told the world I wanted to be alone. But I didn't. I just wasn't convenient." I paused, breathed. "I'm not asking them to come back. I'm asking the world to see what absence really looks like." I stopped recording, uploaded the file to a private link, and placed it inside the public proof folder. Then I opened another tab. Sebastian had posted a story, a moody, backlit selfie with a caption that read, "Sometimes, the hardest part of healing is ignoring the guilt trippers." I stared at it, my jaw tight. The silence I'd been surviving wasn't accidental. It had been curated, framed, packaged, and sold. I closed the tab, sat back in my chair, and let my own video loop quietly in the background. And if silence had protected them before, this time I'd make it their exposure. The mop handle didn't hold. I knew it wouldn't, but I tried anyway. I leaned too far, shifting my weight wrong, and the moment it bent, I fell hard against the bathroom door frame. My left shoulder caught the full brunt, then my hip. Pain lit up like a fuse, sharp, cruel, and immediate. I stayed down longer than I expected to. There wasn't much point in rushing. No one was coming. Eventually, I dragged myself back to the living room, leaving a faint trail behind me from the scuffed skin on my elbow. The floor was cold, smelling faintly of old takeout and dust. I pulled myself up just far enough to knock against the wall with my knuckles, slow, uneven thuds that barely echoed. Maybe Mrs. Geller would hear, or maybe not. The world stayed quiet. When I opened my eyes again, the room had darkened. I wasn't sure how long I'd been out. I couldn't see my phone charger. My back ached, my ankle throbbed. Then came the pounding at the door. Mrs. Geller's voice filtered through. "Oren? Sweetheart, are you okay? I heard something. Should I call someone?" I tried to answer, but my voice came out hoarse, cracked. "Yes, please." She didn't ask questions. Within minutes, I heard the unmistakable rhythm of boots, EMTs entering the room with practiced calm. Their radios crackled softly. One of them crouched beside me, flashlight in hand. "Sir, can you hear me? You took a pretty bad fall. Can you tell us what happened?" I nodded weakly. "Bathroom, mop slipped." "Any family we should contact?" he asked, already checking my pulse. "No," I muttered. "Don't call my family. They left already." He raised an eyebrow but didn't press. I heard Mrs. Geller explaining outside, her voice muffled but urgent. They loaded me into the ambulance with care. The ride was smooth, the conversation minimal. The ER nurse recognized me immediately. "Back so soon?" she said, trying to joke. I didn't laugh. "We discharged you fully supported," she added, flipping through the chart. "Your file says you declined family assistance." I stared at her. I didn't decline anything. She looked at me again, slower this time. "They did." The administrator showed up about an hour later. He was young, clean-cut, and annoyingly confident. Clipboard in hand, he stepped into the room like a bank manager offering condolences for a denied loan. "Mr. Maddox," he began, "after reviewing your file and insurance notes, I regret to inform you we can't authorize additional inpatient care. Your account was recently modified. Code status adjusted. You're categorized as self-managing now." I blinked. "Modified by who?" He cleared his throat. "We're not at liberty to disclose that." Of course they weren't. "They didn't just leave me," I said, mostly to myself. "They erased me medically." I asked for a printed copy of my records. He hesitated but obliged. As I signed the release forms, my hand trembled. Not from pain, but fury. "I'll show you erasure," I said. When I got home later that night, I didn't rest. I couldn't. Instead, I began. Camera on a borrowed tripod, phone set to loop record, a notebook, timestamps carefully marked. I filmed everything. My shoulder bruises, the rug burn across my forearm, the printout from the hospital. I narrated it all, calmly, clearly. "This is what it looks like when you're too inconvenient to be believed," I said into the lens. "This is what survival looks like without a safety net." I logged my pain levels, documented the noise my knee made every time I shifted. And then I created a folder. Legal backup. Phase 1, because if they wanted to disappear me from their world, I'd make them undeniable in mine. I looked into the camera one last time that night, my breath short, my chest heavy. They made me disappear from one screen, I whispered. I'll make them appear on every other one. And with one link, I made their silence public. Morning light filtered through the slats in my blinds, just enough to sketch long shadows across the floor. I thought I was imagining the footsteps at first, soft, deliberate, like someone who didn't want to wake the house. Then I heard the faint clink of a metal zipper and the subtle creak of the door I never left unlocked. Rowan. She stood at the threshold with a canvas bag over one shoulder, hair pulled back, scrubs wrinkled. We hadn't spoken in a long while. The last time we'd seen each other was when I helped her clear a debt that nearly cost her nursing license. She didn't say, "Hi." She didn't need to. Rowan dropped the bag beside my couch, her eyes landing on the bruising along my collarbone, the stiffness in my movements. She didn't flinch, didn't ask if I was okay. She just started unpacking sterile gauze, tape, alcohol swabs. "This looks infected," she said, dabbing gently. I watched her work, numb and grateful. "Did they even call back?" she asked after a while. I nodded once, barely. She didn't speak again for the next half hour, just patched, cleaned, and stacked supplies in my kitchen like she lived there. That afternoon, she opened her laptop, connected to the hospital system through a secure back door I knew she still had access to. "You're marked as self-discharged," she said after a few minutes of clicking. "That's why no follow-up care was approved." I felt the pressure rise in my chest. She clicked again, brow furrowed. "And your emergency contact? It's still listed as Celia Maddox. It was updated 4 days ago." I stared at the screen. My mother hadn't spoken to me since the message from Auckland, but she'd updated the record to keep up the lie. "They didn't just abandon me," I said, voice flat. "They adjusted the narrative to make it look mutual." Rowan didn't argue. She reached into her bag, pulled out a paper planner, and started writing. "You need a care schedule? I'll handle wound management. I'll bring in someone from PT I trust. Daily logs. We'll document everything." That night, we set up cameras. One on a tripod facing the living room, another near the bathroom door. I started a daily recording. Pain log day 9. Swelling has spread to shoulder blade. Bruising deepening. Appetite poor. Recorded at 7:11 p.m. I opened a blank document and typed the title, "Disowned by Proxy." Rowan sat in silence, typing on her own device. She didn't say what she was doing, but I saw the headline on her screen. "When the family leaves and the lies stay." A caregiver's forum post, anonymous. Her words, but they felt like mine. Within hours, replies poured in. People across the country who had been ghosted, rewritten, ignored, financially cut off while being presented as independent. It wasn't just me. I created a new folder, Community Evidence. "It's not just me," I whispered. "It never was." That night, I watched one of Sebastian's newest videos. He was seated on a patio somewhere expensive, talking about vulnerability and boundaries as if he'd invented them. In the comments, his fans praised his honesty. I opened a new Google Doc. At the top, I typed, "What happens when you're too strong to be loved?" It wasn't bitter, it wasn't spiteful, it was structured, factual, emotional, yes, but grounded. I hit share. Then I copied the link, scrolled to Sebastian's post, and pasted it as a reply to a comment that read, "You're such an inspiration." And with one link, I made their silence public. They wanted silence. I gave them attention. By mid-morning, the post had taken on a life of its own. What started as a quiet, structured document meant for accountability was now a wildfire across message boards and small media platforms. Screenshots circulated. Comment sections grew claws. Some anonymous user found an old fundraiser Sebastian had launched years ago, one that had featured family images and language like, "We're all in this together." Someone else pulled archived footage from a local morning show. Celia, in pearls and soft pastels, talking about raising resilient sons. "Which one?" a comment asked under the video. "Because this doesn't line up with what we're seeing." I didn't engage. I didn't correct. I didn't defend. Instead, I watched. Then, Celia posted. Her story began with a close-up of her hand holding a glass of wine, panning to a fireplace. Her voice floated in soft and brittle like pressed petals. "When you love someone too much," she said, "sometimes you lose yourself in their storms. You become the punching bag, the fixer, the one always holding space. But self-care is not selfish. Cutting off toxic patterns is healing." She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. The framing was pristine. The filters were warm. Her followers swarmed the comments. "Proud of you, Celia. Protect your peace." So brave to share. Family doesn't mean obligation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Public empathy had always favored the one who spoke first, even if they'd been the one holding the scissors. That afternoon, Rowan texted me a screenshot. A friend of hers in legal flagged something new. Probate records filed just days earlier. Sebastian was listed as the sole inheritor of our parents' estate. I stared at the text thread for a while, heart steady, breath even. This wasn't surprise. This was structure. A framework to remove me from every corner. Financial, familial, emotional. I called the county office and requested a certified copy of the previous will. The assistant on the other end was polite. Too polite. "You'll need to prove standing," she said, "if you believe there's been undue influence." I didn't argue. I opened my timeline file and added a new chapter. Labeled it Inheritance of Silence. Inside, I uploaded every receipt I'd ever covered for Dad's prescriptions, screenshots of Celia's past emails assuring equal stake, and a grainy clip from a 2016 Christmas dinner where she laughed and said, "Both boys are set. Everything's in writing." I ended that day recording myself again, seated in the same chair, same angle, same tone. "The new will favors Sebastian," I said. "I had no knowledge, no notice, no say, but I have proof." Then came the ping. Late night. Subject line. "We saw what you posted. This needs to stop." The sender. Family thread. Celia Sebastian Harlan. 3 names bound by blood, not truth. I leaned back, smiled, just slightly, and said aloud to the empty room, "Good, it finally started." I didn't stay to hear their excuses, because this time I knew I wasn't the one who owed anything. Rowan's message came mid-morning. "Rock Hill Club, 6 p.m. family celebration. Sebastian, you weren't invited." Of course I wasn't. She'd signed up as a last-minute caterer's assistant, just long enough to get me a guest list and a floor plan. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I prepped like I was going to trial. A fresh folder went into my messenger bag, marked in bold, receipts, audio, legal filings, timeline. "This isn't for drama," I said aloud to the empty apartment. "This is for truth." When I arrived, the club glowed with warm uplighting. Crystal glasses clinked. Laughter spilled onto the front steps. Inside, the space was polished, wrapped in navy and silver, like someone had Googled "respectable legacy" and ordered everything in bulk. I moved quietly along the wall. No one noticed. Or they pretended not to. A large screen looped photos of Sebastian, elementary spelling bee trophies, teenage charity runs, ribbon cuttings with city council members. Then came the family shots, smiling trips to Yellowstone, Tahoe, a vineyard in Northern California. My face blurred in one, cut from another. In the vineyard photo, they were all in matching white linen, arms around each other. I took that photo. I paid for that trip. I watched it fade to black, replaced by soft piano and Sebastian's voiceover. Every chapter, every challenge, built the man you see today. Before I could speak, the TikTok clip queued up. A familiar voice, Celia's. From a sunlit balcony in Queenstown, she beamed into the camera. We only brought the real core of the family. Gasps broke through the hum of conversation. Glass halted mid-air. I stepped forward. No announcement, no spotlight, just the sound of my shoes on parquet. Rowan slipped the USB into the projector's side panel, gave me a nod. The slideshow cut out. The screen lit again, this time with my file. First, a voicemail recording. Celia's voice. Oren manipulates guilt like it's currency. Then, time-stamped hospital forms, bruising photographs, audio clips where Sebastian laughed. He's just bitter he didn't get the Golden Boy edit. Last, my voice, steady, quiet. I didn't ruin this family. I just stopped hiding from it. Silence fell. Thick, absolute. Even the servers stopped moving. I could feel their eyes, some full of pity, others horror, some finally seeing what I had been screaming in silence. Celia opened her mouth. Sebastian stepped in, his tone sharp, accusing. You told me he was lying. She froze. I looked at them, both of them, and said nothing. I didn't need to. My work was done. As voices behind me rose, panicked, defensive, unraveling, I walked out through the same door I'd entered. No one stopped me. Some people stay silent out of fear. Others, because they're finally ready to speak. I walked back into my apartment and locked the door behind me like I'd done 100 times before. But this time the click sounded different. Final. Like a seal on a chapter that had been dragging on for far too long. The silence was crushing. Not because it was loud, but because this time it wasn't unfamiliar. It was mine. News blogs had picked up the footage from the Rock Hill Club. Twitter threads dissected every word from the audio, every flicker in Sebastian's expression. Some outlets blurred my bruises, others left them unfiltered. None of it felt like victory. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall and whispered. I thought this would feel like justice. It felt more like a bruise I pressed too hard. By mid-morning the next day, a knock broke the quiet. It was soft, not urgent. I opened the door to see Clyde. He looked almost embarrassed, holding a worn leather folder and a grocery bag. You probably don't remember, he said, but you co-signed my small business loan back in 2017. You didn't even know me that well. I remembered. Barely. He was a client's cousin, desperate, polite. I saw the video, he continued. What you did, nobody does that unless they've been pushed too far. Whatever you need, legal help, statement, money, I got you. It wasn't the offer that floored me. It was that something I gave out of instinct once came back on its own. As Clyde left, I stood in the doorway longer than I should have. The silence wasn't heavy now. It was earned. Later that afternoon, the group text thread lit up. Celia. You went too far. You made us look like monsters. Sebastian. You knew Mom's mental health was fragile. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I just forwarded both texts into my legal folder and labeled the email chain. Damage control or admission. Then I whispered, You made yourselves look like monsters. I just turned the lights on. That evening, Rowan and I met at the same cafe we always used for quiet talks. I asked the question I hadn't even let myself think out loud. Did I go too far? She stirred her coffee, then looked at me. What would have happened if you hadn't? I stared out the window. It was raining again. Portland had this way of matching your emotional forecast like it was on a shared wavelength. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't navigating a war. I was documenting a battlefield that had always been there. Later, back at home, I opened a fresh file. Recovery begins with truth. I started typing. Step 1, name the wound. Step 2, refuse to be quiet about it. Just as I clicked save, a notification slid across my screen. New email. Subject: I didn't know everything, but now I need to. From Mirabelle K. I stared at the screen, my hand hovering over the mouse. Sometimes it's the ones you thought were part of the harm who bring the first light back. I opened the email from Mirabelle before I could talk myself out of it. Attached was a video file. No subject line, no message body, just the name. I owe you this. She was sitting against a plain wall, no makeup, no polish. Her hair was tucked behind one ear like she always did when she was trying to stay composed. I know this is late, she began, and I know that probably makes it worse. She didn't cry, but her voice cracked in the middle of every third sentence. They told me that if I stayed with you, I'd be cut out, that there'd be no future, no inheritance, no wedding invites, nothing. She looked down once, swallowed hard. I was 24. I believed them. I caved. Then she looked directly into the lens. They said Sebastian would become you, but safer, easier, more polished. He didn't. He never even tried. And I let them shrink you in my mind because it made it easier to leave. The screen went black after that. I watched it 3 times. Not out of masochism, but because I didn't want to miss anything, any tone, any word that might shift my chest 1 inch closer to release. I didn't feel triumph, just proof that even love had a ledger. I thought about the night we built those ridiculous IKEA shelves, the 2 of us on the floor fighting over which screw went where, both laughing until we couldn't breathe. That was the last moment I believed someone had chosen me without cost. The next morning, I walked into the records office downtown. A man behind thick glasses asked me what I needed. Full documentation of insurance file adjustments post-accident, I said, and emergency contact change logs. He blinked, then went to the back. What he returned with was concise and devastating. My emergency contact had been switched to self-managed exactly 48 hours after the crash. The origin? An IP address linked to Sebastian's media company. I added the folder to my case log, labeled it Medical Fraud, 48-hour window. It wasn't just abandonment, it was negligence, weaponized. Later that day, Clyde came over with 2 sandwiches and a folder of sample legal statements. "This is actionable," he said. I looked at him. "Would it fix anything?" He didn't flinch. "Not them, but maybe you." We sat at my kitchen table for an hour going over deposition structure. I wasn't doing this to punish them. I was doing this so the version of me they'd erased couldn't be printed, framed, and handed out at future gatherings like a sanitized family memoir. "I'm not healing by hurting them," I said finally. "I'm healing by removing their power to define me." That night, I opened the deposition draft and began writing. 3 pages in, a knock echoed through the apartment. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door. There she was, Lily. Eyes puffy, hair tied in a messy bun, a small suitcase at her feet. "I left them," she said. "Then let them see what happens when I stop stepping back." Lily and I sat across from each other in the kitchen, 2 steaming mugs between us and miles of silence in the air. Neither of us reached for blame. Neither of us apologized first. Maybe because we both knew that truth had already done the speaking. "I didn't know what staying meant," Lily said after a while, stirring a teaspoon she never used. "Until I left." I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't the same girl who used to memorize Dad's coffee order or cover for Sebastian when he forgot birthdays. Her hair was pulled into a low knot, and her voice had that tired clarity only grief grants. "They told everyone," she added softly, "that you were choosing distance, that you needed space to heal privately." I raised an eyebrow. "And you believed them?" She didn't flinch. I needed to. For a long time, we just sat. No lecture needed. I opened my laptop and pulled up a screenshot, a message from our cousin Rachel on Facebook. "So glad you're finally back from your trip, Oren. Hope the retreat helped." Lily leaned in and gasped. "They said you were at a wellness center?" "They said a lot of things," I replied. And that's when I saw it. The flicker behind her eyes. Realization is heavier than guilt. It crashes. "They didn't just erase you," she whispered. "They replaced you." Her voice broke. She wiped her cheeks, but the tears kept coming. And I played along. I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. Later, I sat her down and walked her through the edits, the legal filings, the emergency contact changes. Every small deletion that added up to an entire person removed. She listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't defend. When I was done, she asked the only question that mattered. "Do you forgive me?" I breathed in, held it. "I can't forgive what you haven't understood yet," I said. "But you can stay here tonight." That evening, after she fell asleep on the couch, I went to my desk. I opened a blank document and began writing a letter. Not one I'd send, but one I needed to write. "I forgive you, not for what you did, but for how long it took me to stop hoping you wouldn't." I folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer labeled, "For closure, not return." Before heading to bed, I poured a glass of water. Lily, eyes barely open, whispered, "Can I read that someday?" "If I ever send it," I said, "it's for me. Not you." The next morning, while Lily was out grabbing groceries, I checked my phone. New message from Clyde. Subject: Urgent legal notice. You've been named in a cease and desist from your family's attorney. I stared at the screen, the corners of my mouth tightening, not into a smirk, but something colder. "So," I whispered, "we're drawing lines now. Because surviving isn't the reward. Reclaiming your name is." I read the cease and desist letter over a slow cup of black coffee. The family crest embossed at the top did nothing to soften the irony. It was as if they thought they could end this the same way they'd handled everything else, with silence, with paper. Instead, I uploaded a rebuttal, titled it, "The Truth, Not a Threat." Attached documents, video clips, screenshots, and the full deposition file. Then I hit publish. By lunch, it was trending on a mid-tier outlet's website. By sunset, it was on Reddit's front page. Not everyone was kind, but they were watching. And watching was power. They wanted silence, I typed in the post's final sentence. I gave them a mirror. The next 48 hours were a slow unravel. Sebastian's non-profit board issued a public statement. Pending investigation, Mr. Wexler is suspended indefinitely. Celia's social accounts went private. Brands she once boasted of quietly disappeared from her tags. Some relatives sent messages. A few apologized, most didn't. One cousin wrote, "I didn't know, I'm sorry." Another asked, "Is it true you were never in rehab?" I didn't answer either. Vindication doesn't need applause. It just needs clarity. Clyde called with an update. The probate judge accepted our petition for review. I'd been officially excluded from the will. The hearing was set. I arrived in court in black slacks and a calm I hadn't known I'd earned. Rowan sat beside me. Her presence, solid and unspoken. Across the aisle, Celia and Sebastian looked smaller than I remembered. We didn't exchange glances. The judge reviewed the documentation, financial inconsistencies, the sudden insurance updates, every thread tied together in chronological order. When the judge finally spoke, her tone was firm. Mr. Wexler's testimony is now material to the ethical review of this estate. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded. Back home that evening, Lily and I ate Chinese takeout on the living room floor. No TV, no music. She asked, "Do you want them to lose everything?" I swallowed, then said, "No, just the control over how the story ends." After she went to bed, I opened the drawer labeled "Foreclosure, Not Return," pulled out the apology letter I'd written weeks before. Then I deleted the file. Some things don't need to exist anymore. The next morning, I stepped into the community center. Not as a guest, as a volunteer. 3 days a week, I ran a journaling circle for those dealing with complicated family fallout. No one knew my story unless they asked, and when they did, I told them only what mattered. I used to wait for apologies. Now I build archives. On the bulletin board near the front door was a picture of me and 5 others from our group. The caption read, "The family you choose." That was the ending I never asked their permission to write. They tried to erase me quietly. But in the end, I chose to speak loudly, with evidence, with truth, and most importantly, with integrity. If you've followed this story, I hope you take this with you. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means surrendering your story to those who never deserved to write it. You don't owe anyone your silence, especially when they've used it to justify their betrayal. Whether it's family, friends, or a community, you have the right to reclaim your place, not through revenge, but through clarity, through courage, through documentation and dignity. I've learned that survival isn't just breathing through the chaos. It's standing in your truth, even if your voice shakes, especially if it does. Healing doesn't always come with closure from others. Sometimes it begins when you finally stop waiting for it. What about you? Have you ever had to rewrite your story because someone else tried to steal the pen? If this story touched your heart or made you reflect on your own family, drop a 1 in the comments. Or just tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, I'd love to hear why. Every voice matters. And if you want to hear more stories that go beyond surface drama and speak to something deeper, something real, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because the next chapter might just be yours.